Defensively, Vic Fangio, the guy that I think they would have hired last year if they'd known that the Cardinals were tampering with Jonathan Gannon and planning to hire him as the head coach after the Super Bowl. By then, Fangio had verbally committed to Miami, and he didn't renege on that. So he stayed in Miami for a year, realized this isn't working, goes to Philly. Here he is on the most important elements of the defense that he's bringing to town.
Good players. And I'm not trying to be a wise guy with that, but we have a system that is versatile. We like to think that, it needs to be versatile because every week you're facing different strengths of an offense, different schemes. So what you play in one week 10, 15 times, you may not play it all the next week. So you have to have a versatile system for the offenses today in the NFL. And what we'll eventually do is learn what our guys are best at. So I like to throw a lot at them early because I think one of the worst things you can do is come week 3, week 5, man, we could really use this scheme, but it hadn't been introduced to the players yet. Whereas if you introduced it to them in training camp and worked on it, when you pull it back out 3-4 weeks later, there's a recall.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's what coaching is. That's what you have to do. When you're dealing with a new group of players, you've got to be sensitive to how they absorb information, and you have got to find a way to get it to where you want to be, and you got to be flexible. You've got to be willing, just like on offense, you got to deal with what you can do well defensively, and hopefully some of the moves that have been made this offseason by the Eagles take into account what is ideal for Vic Fangio, the guy that they did want last year and the guy they would have hired last year, and maybe the guy who, if he was present when things were falling apart, might have been able to help Nick Sirianni hold it together because he's got that extensive experience as an assistant and as a head coach. And I think that the presence of both of these guys, it can't get any worse than it did down the stretch. Something needed to give. When they went from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia last year, I feel bad for Matt Patricia, but he's been part of 2 crap shows, 2022 Patriots and 2023 Eagles, and now Fangio comes in, and maybe he can be the guy that really helps. When things start to go south, help coach them out of those messes. Couple of dominant defensive performances, force a turnover, get a short field, make it easier for the offense. Loss becomes a win. That bad trend turns into something good. And that may be one of those things where there isn't going to be a bright line to it. But if the Eagles avoid a collapse this year, maybe it's just the presence of Fangio to kind of calm things down at the right time.
Well, right. And, I think about Vic Fangio as one of these sort of defensive stalwarts, right? A guy that I think most teams, if they didn't have a really good defensive coordinator, would want as their defensive coordinator. And that's what I felt really good about him going to Miami last year and thinking, man, that's somebody that can help elevate that defense. And it didn't necessarily work out, and there were a lot of circumstances, injuries, whatever you want to say. But I think if Fangio can do the kinds of things that we expect from a Fangio system, keep it versatile, accentuate the strengths, come up with creative ways of trying to dismantle an offense, then the Eagles should be fine defensively. They should be at least fine, right? They could be great because, again, that's a team, that does have talent. Now, we used to talk about the Chargers like this all the time. Oh, man, they have so much talent, this and that. And it's like, well, do they? Because when have they really won a lot of stuff? We've seen the Eagles win. We know that their collection of talent actually is great. So it's now on Vic Fangio to make sure that he can pull that out of them. So I believe that Fangio is going to be able to do that. And I think when you've got a guy that's, on sort of, we'll call it the back 9 of his career as a defensive guy. It just reminds me of, that meme where it's like Ryan Gosling and Steve Carell walking, and like Ryan Gosling is like very prim and proper, and like he's got, the tight jeans on, and like Steve Carell is like a little bit more sloppy, and it's like offensive coordinator versus defensive coordinator. Steve Carell, like Vic Fangio is the Steve Carell in there, and that's exactly what you want. You want that defensive coordinator to be like, all right, I'm about ball. I'm just like, I don't care what all that other stuff is. I'm gruff. I'm a defensive guy. Like, that's Vic Fangio. And I think that's what the Eagles need.
Yeah, and some of the guys in Miami apparently didn't take to that all that well. Well, that's on them.
Yeah.
At some point, you've got to submit to the coaching if you want to get the best out of what you are. And that's the challenge for the older coaches who have been around football for a long time, adjusting and adapting to the way things are now done and the way players expect to be treated, because some of them will resist the old school ways. But if you buy in, it tends to work. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.